It's 2025 and I'm looking for some of the best roguelike games that are releasing this year. There'll be at least 10, but to be honest, I'm just going to keep going until I can't find any more. Let's start out with a very action-packed and a little bit funny-looking Killer Bean, a game in which you play as a rogue assassin that just happens to be, well, a coffee bean, set on a mission to take out the bad guys. Killer Bean is an action roguelike game that changes the storyline and missions every time you play, has a lot of physics-based combat, and some pretty humorous dialogue to play through. Kind of feels like old school GTA-ish comedy roguelike action game. It's got a lot of followers on Steam. Curious to see how this one goes. We're moving on to Deep Rock Galactic Roadcore, which is an action roguelike, asset flip, or build on to the co-op game Deep Rock Galactic. In this game, you can be expecting to work together in a really highly focused co-op game with up to 3 friends, setting off on some mining missions into some procedurally generated caves. The roguelike elements in this game revolve around the fact that each run you're starting off with basics, having to work your way up, with some pretty interesting difficulty ramping as well. I'll be expecting to see some pretty interesting, creepy looking enemies when you're mining down there with your friends. Tenjutsu is an action roguelike game with some really hard-hitting, gritty pixel art graphics that I just love. In this game, you play as a renegade yakuza and need to try and take out 4 different syndicates. One of the cool things about this roguelike game is that in each run you get to choose which order you want to take the syndicates out, which will change the way the gameplay works. Use martial arts and weapons with the ability to upgrade as you go along in a game that I think looks really fun. We are jumping into another roguelike co-op game here with Tears of Metal, which I think probably has the best trailer of any of the games that we've covered so far. Tears of Metal is a 3D medieval hack and slash game set within Scottish Highlands, I think that sounds right, in which you will be exploring some pretty big epic scale fights, which have been triggered by this mysterious dragon meteor that sort of hits the land and brings some evil demons with you. The scale of Tears of Metal is awesome. I'm hoping it has some insane music to go along with it. Definitely one to keep an eye out on. I wanted to throw in something a little bit different, so I went looking for an auto battler or a deck building game, and I found Roguelite, which is definitely a small scale game in which you build your deck up and use your cards set within these sort of little real-time based action fight scenes in these dungeons. It's definitely on the small scale, but Roguelite might be a game to keep an eye out for. This game is so far outside the style of roguelike that I play, but I feel like I need to include it in here because it's got a bit of a following. It's called Fleapit. It is a dating-based rhythm game with actually really cool looking gameplay mechanics, and I really like the music there. It's got some cool beats to it, but essentially you'll be dancing your way through different levels of hell trying to find, I assume, a very anime-ish looking lady with not that much clothes on. And for some people, that's the kind of roguelike that you're getting into. I guess you can always say that you're there for the gameplay, right? Sworn is possibly the most crisp and polished looking game in this video. It is a 1 to 4 player co-op game set within Camelot, which is kind of being ruined by a corrupt King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, so be expecting some Arthurian legend sort of mythology here. You get to play as a number of different classes, and your upgrades will take the form of some blessings from the fae that you meet along the way. Lots of customization in terms of your gameplay and the style that you want to play through, and to be honest, a game that I look at and just think, yeah, this is probably going to be really good. I'm excited for Anomaly President, and a lot of that comes down to the fact that Anomaly Agent was one of my favourite indie games of the last few years. Given how fun the story and the action mechanics were in that game, I'd be expecting a very quirky story with really cool characters and fun gameplay as well. In this game in which you kind of run a double life of one running for president whilst at night time, taking down all these foes in a very action sequence style of events. Rogue Soulstone to me looks more like that vampire survivor style game, as you utilize everything that you can to survive as long as you can, set within a world with lots of enemies. There definitely is some RPG style mechanics here in terms of the abilities that you have, the build paths and skill trees that you'll need to upgrade after each run, and also just the way that you interact with the game itself in terms of dealing damage and different types of spells that you get access to. A pretty simplistic looking 3D game, but one that if it has enough enemies and difference in terms of the way that you play could be really fun. Will definitely require some humongous bosses to fight. Yasha Legends of the Demon Blade is an action roguelike game with exploration set within a Japanese fantasy-inspired world. This game involves some pretty fast-paced action, battles set within arenas, and there are a number of different characters to play with and different demon blades that you can collect along the way that interact differently. A pretty looking game. I'm wondering if there's a bit of fan service in there, but one that could be interesting. Windrunners is our first roguelike game here that has bullet hell and also is a side-scrolling shooting game. There isn't a lot of information about Windrunners as of yet, but I really like the way that it's fast-paced, with some pretty epic-looking boss fights, and it has a pretty stereotypical storyline structured to it in terms of rebellious invading force, and your job is to be the resistance and try and take care of them. Definitely has some retro elements in a genre that gets a little bit of love but sometimes gets left behind as well. Stylistically, so very different from every other game that you're going to see in this video, Worship claims to be a multiplayer Pikmin-inspired roguelike game, in which you play as a devout zealot of a pretty crazy-looking demonic god, and your job is to try and expand your influence and take over the universe. It might look cute, but if the trailer's anything to go by, there's sacrifices and some pretty gruesome-looking blood rituals. Definitely on the quirky side. Worship looks on the awesome side too. JonSlayer Hordes of Hell is another arena-based survivor roguelike game inspired by ancient Norse mythology, which means you'll be getting some blessings from those Norse gods that you see in lots of games these days. Another game with bullet hell style mechanics, and one in which looks really familiar in terms of the gameplay and the way that you have different characters and upgrades and things like that, but the thing that sets JonSlayer apart from other games you might have seen is definitely the scope and the quality of the settings that you're playing through. Some of these environments look amazing. Having played a number of these games as well, I'm definitely expecting and will be disappointed if I don't have some huge epic boss fights to play through. JonSlayer is actually coming out quite soon in early access, so one get to try out pretty quickly. I'm glad that we've got at least one of those classic top-down, arcade-ish looking roguelike games here, and Undermine 2, the sequel to Undermine, is the game that definitely meets that criteria. This time adding in some co-op play when you can play with another friend. Undermine 2 has some really good looking pixel graphics, and also the ability to do lots of crafting, combining different things together to create powerful relics and turn your peasant into something more interesting. Undermine 2 has fast-paced action, really fun boss fights, and arenas to play through, in a more dungeon crawling style roguelike game. The last game we're going to look at here is Shape of Dreams, a MOBA style roguelike game for those people that want to have a sore hand because clicking just is something that you're addicted to. Shape of Dreams has some pretty crazy looking action animations, and a lot of spells to play, set within the dream world. Another co-op game, play by yourself, play with a few friends if you want to. Hey, there are a lot of roguelike games. I do appreciate some of them. People are going to tell me they're roguelike, but I'm trusting what the developers are telling us in terms of their Steam tags. Let me know which one is your favorite. Let me know if I've missed any. Until next time, thanks for watching.